Hello and welcome to the Sustainability Street podcast. My name is Becky Toll, owner-manager at Crowberry Consulting Limited, enabling sustainable futures, discussing with you the international standard for environmental management, ISO 14001. This podcast will introduce the standard ISO 14001, how it works in practice, and how you can connect it to other ISOs and also PAS, publicly available specifications, to allow you to build a multifaceted group of standards and specifications for your organisation. This is important as many businesses and organisations are now working towards net carbon zero, and you may wish to use ISO 14001 as your starting point or to allow you to integrate with other standards such as PAS 2060, for example. So what is the international standard ISO 14001? The ISO 14001 defines criteria for an environmental management system, or EMS for short. Instead of stating requirements for environmental performance, it maps out the framework that an organisation or a business can follow to set up an effective EMS. It aims to help organisations interested in improving resource efficiency, reducing waste and reducing cost, for example. The standard is applicable to any organisation, regardless of size, type or nature, and can be applied to a variety of levels in the business, from the organisational level down to a product and service level. While achieving the standard is not obligatory or mandatory for any business, being certified as an ISO 14001 company is considered highly prestigious and really makes the organisation stand out against the competition. So listeners, what are the intended outcomes of an environmental management system? These can include, for example, the enhancement of your environmental performance, the fulfilment of any compliance obligations, and the achievement of your environmental objectives, along with protecting the environment by preventing or mitigating any adverse environmental impacts you may have. The basic principles of the ISO 14001 are based on the plan, do, check and act cycle, which our listeners may already be familiar with, especially if you have an ISO in place. The PDCA, or Plan, Do, Check, Act model, can briefly be outlined as follows. Plan. This means to establish your environmental objectives and processes necessary to deliver results in accordance with the organisation's environmental policy. Do. This means to implement the above processes as planned. Check. This means to monitor and measure processes against your environmental policy, including its commitments, environmental objectives, and operating criteria, and to report the results. And act. This means to take action to continually improve. So clearly, listeners, implementing the ISO 14001 standard can help act as the framework to ensure the sustainable development of your organisation. This means meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. The systematic approach offered by ISO 14001 shows us that an organisation can positively contribute to this critical environmental pillar of sustainability. The success of the environmental management system depends on commitment from all levels and functions of the organisation, led by top management. This will lead to opportunities to prevent or mitigate adverse environmental impacts and enhance beneficial environmental impacts, especially those with a strategic and competitive implication. Top management are required to address both the risk and opportunities by integrating, where possible, the EMS into business processes the strategic direction, and also general decision making, aligning these with other business priorities and incorporating environmental governance into its overall management system. The standard contains 32 clauses, all of which need to be demonstrated or evidenced by the organisation. So, listeners, let's take a closer look at those planning clauses. Planning clauses. To begin, an organisation must determine both the internal and external issues that are relevant to its purpose and can affect its ability to achieve the outcomes of the EMS. The system must also identify those interested parties and their needs and expectations, and which of these needs and expectations become compliance obligations. Further to this, the boundaries of the system need to be set and the scope agreed upon. To ensure a successful EMS, an organisation not only has to establish, but also implement, maintain, and continually improve the system. Leadership and commitment is also a vital prerequisite. The top management we mentioned above have to take accountability for the effectiveness of the system, ensuring that the environmental policy and the objectives are established and link back to the strategic direction of your organisation. The environmental policy is a core document required of ISO 14001. It must include a commitment to protect the environment, prevent pollution, and other specific commitments relevant to the context of the organisation. It must also commit to fulfil the compliance obligations. In other words, all the laws and acts that apply in regards to environmental management. A core part of ISO 14001 planning is also to determine risk and opportunities along with your environmental aspects and compliance obligations. The environmental aspects need to be determined for the activities, products, and services that the organisation can both control and also influence, along with their associated environmental impacts, considering a life cycle perspective. This does not mean, however, a full-on life cycle analysis is required. The standard in the annex refers to elements such as raw material acquisition, design, production, transportation, delivery, use, end-of-life treatment, and final disposal. Of course, the life cycle stages, as outlined, will vary applicable to your activity, product, or service. Compliance obligations need to be determined, and organisations need to have access to these and to take them into account when building the environmental management system. There are currently over 1,600 environmental laws alone in the UK, so this is a big task and one which Crowberry Consulting can support you with. Another core part of the environmental management system is planning to achieve your environmental objectives. Now, the ISO standard does not dictate which objectives to set. That is up to you, your team, and your system to decide. All of the ISO standards include 3 clauses related to support, and these are resources, competency, and awareness. And there's also a clause in 14001 for communications, both internal and external. The standard involves persons doing work under your control that can affect your environmental performance and your ability to fulfill your compliance obligations. Typically, we are referring to contractors here. Anyone under the organisation's control needs to be aware of the environmental policy, the significant aspects, and how they can positively contribute to the effectiveness of the environmental management system. Doing clauses. In the standard, clause 8.1 operational control and 8.2 emergency preparedness and response are covered as the doing clauses. And again, the organisation needs to establish, implement and maintain the processes needed to meet the environmental management system requirements consistent with a life cycle perspective. Checking clauses. This is termed performance evaluation, or clause 9.1, which covers monitoring, measurement, analysis and evaluation. And clause 9.2 covers the evaluation of compliance, which is linked to clause 6.1.3 detailed above. As with all ISO standards, there is a requirement for the provision of internal audits and also a management review to take place under the checking clauses. Act clauses. In the standard, this is headed up as improvement and is covered in clauses 10.1, 10.2 and 10.3 and ends with a continual improvement clause. So listeners, this might sound like a lot to take in, and certainly here at Crowberry Consulting, we're here to help you achieve ISO 14001 or maintain your ISO 14001. And we recently launched an online Introduction and Foundation course to ISO 14001. Please visit our website and click on Training to purchase this course. The main aim of this course is to help companies to improve their environmental performance whilst complying with any applicable legislation. The organisation sets its own goals and targets, whilst the course highlights what needs to be done for these goals to be met. The first workshop of the course is about risk and opportunity factors for the participating organisation's environmental management system. This is potentially one of the most vital elements for any organisation, as taking advantage of all possible opportunities can really help skyrocket a business. The workshop helps businesses to identify risk, opportunities, and how to pull these through in the day-to-day running of your organisation. On top of that, it is about making sure that your organisation is mitigating, adapting and taking advantage of any opportunities as well as risks. The second workshop on the course focuses on the organisation itself and looks at internal and external factors, as well as looking at who are your interested parties and the scope of your organisation's environmental management system. It introduces the concept of a pestle analysis and looks at the broader factors around the organisation, such as political and economic, etc., and gets to grips with the background of these critical elements that can impact on your business or organisation's environmental management. Workshop 3 on the course is all about leadership and responsibility, and it focuses on individual roles and responsibilities that come with them. The workshop allows delegates to think about who in the organisation should take responsibility for the protection of the environment and the prevention of pollution. It also makes sure that this is understood and can be applied within the organisation. The fourth workshop looks at your environmental policy and getting users to actually draft an environmental policy if there isn't one there. If you do have an environmental policy, we will use this document to compare it to the clause of the standard and to assess ways in which it could be improved. Workshop 5 draws attention to your environmental aspects and impacts and demonstrates ways of reducing some of the negative impacts around the business. The sixth and final workshop is all around environmental objectives and targets and starting to set some key performance indicators to allow delegates to monitor and manage their environmental objectives and targets. In conclusion, the Crowberry Consulting ISO 14001 Environmental Awareness and Introduction course is a great place to start for any organisation or business looking to evaluate and to improve your current environmental management system. It will also help organisations to make sure they're using all the best possible methods to protect the environment, to continually improve and to meet your current goals and targets, as well as setting up new ones, and also to ensure that staff and subcontractors are properly trained. Crowberry Consulting has supported many customers with the implementation, training and auditing to the standard, and we can also provide a gap analysis to help you on your journey. For more information, listeners, about this course, please go to www.crowberryconsulting.com/training. And if you're interested today in purchasing a copy of the ISO standard, please visit www.crowberryconsulting.com/standards-shop. So listeners, that brings us to the end of our introduction to ISO 14001 with myself, Becky Toll from Crowberry Consulting Limited. Thank you so much for listening, and remember folks that you can support the podcast and give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, and please get in touch to discuss anything in this episode or previous episodes via our Twitter, Instagram and Facebook pages under the handle @Crowberry Consulting. So thanks for listening folks, and goodbye.